today I want to do striking, but I want to do striking at the beginning, especially in traditional format. I explain to people that when you learn a traditional martial art, you're not just learning the techniques like you use them in a fight, but you're learning the concepts, and you're also doing body conditioning, developing attributes. So that sounds wonderful, like I'm learning all this stuff, but its strength is also its weakness, because then you're not seeing the whole picture sometimes. You're not going to necessarily fight with like your hand down or your hand extended or in a particular stance. It's trying to get you to move your body in a certain way. It's capturing a moment in time. It's teaching you a concept. So what I'm going to try to do is show you some of the traditional drills, show you then the traditional footwork, then start showing you the applications. And so, I'm also going to focus a little bit on the footwork now. As I was joking, as I was putting this down, I didn't have my my protractor, so these are not exact angles. But you have a north-south line, and you have the 45-degree angles. Actually, I was pretty good probably with this. I don't know about the next part. In Chinese, there's a thing called the 7-star, and the concept is the zigzag. And so we have what they call meridian stepping, which is when I'm stepping north and south, which is if you've done something like taekwondo or karate, you've probably done a million. The first thing they do is they teach you front walking. And it makes sense because that's how you walk in real life. When you do kickboxing, you shuffle footwork. And so you don't go to the deli like this. I hope not. Please tell me you don't. Right? But it's a useful footwork. Then we have the zigzagging, which sometimes is called fake lead, because this foot will be forward, but this shoulder will be forward. This foot will be forward, but this shoulder will be forward. I'm going to get into all this, but I'm going to show you this. I'm going to show you the zigzag. The sort of quick summary of what I'm saying is, first we have a thing called the wheeling body. The wheeling body, which is when you're standing in place and turning. And that's just first to get you to generate some power. Then you have the zigzag stepping, the 7-star stepping, and that starts to be more combat application, whereas the wheeling body is more concepts. Get your feet together. Right? There's a couple of things we can do. Like, I feel like this is attention. This is ready. Right? If you've done karate, you've seen things like this. Right? I can come back here, and I have two basic postures. I can do this, or I can do the elbows up. For right now, the easiest one to do is the hands on the hips. It doesn't, it's hard to do this while I'm standing on this platform, but basically, I want to get about shoulder width. And I'm going to start to turn into what we call a side stance. So it's not like a karate front stance for two reasons. One, it's not super wide. And second of all, it's not going north and south, it's going east and west. And it's kind of narrow, because obviously if I did this also I'd be opening up my groin. So it's almost like the thing they do in Wing Chun, the kind of narrow stance. But the thing is, if I'm turning to my left knee is going to bend, my right leg is going to be straight. And then I'm going to turn, so that as I turn now to my right knee will be bent, and my left leg will be straight. And you'll notice that I'm turning my hip, and my elbows help me get that concept that I'm turning over. I'm not just doing, I'm turning. So if you were looking at me from the ceiling, what you'd notice is that my feet are east and west, but my elbows are north and south, meaning I'm making a cross position. There are two things to keep in mind here. With this stance, we're doing what they call yuling, meaning the power. I'm going to probably do most of this in Cantonese, the way I learned it. Meaning the power from the waist. You will hear people talk about this thing called quad. And there's no way to explain this and not be like a little gross. But when they talk about quads, the crease actually inside of your thigh, like that crease in here, What they're trying to do is tell you have to turn all the way to get your hip to turn. In other words, I'm not here. Like for example, when I'm throwing a reverse punch in karate, I'm not here. I'm trying to turn. So what happens is you're turning into that crease. So I tell people, and again, please excuse me for saying this, but it's basically your nuts smacking your thigh. And then you're using a quad. In other words, you're not here, you're here, right? And you can feel the difference in the power. Now, the other thing I want to talk about once we get used to this is you'll notice that my elbows are north and south, and I'm fighting somebody that's standing on that north-south line. So one of the most important things is to make sure that I get my hip on that line, not here. You see the difference between what I just did? This is not my hip. My hip is the side of my hip. I have power when I line up my wrist to my elbow to my shoulder, and my shoulder is on the same line as my hip. Here, I don't have power. Now, good karate, good taekwondo is not supposed to be here and here. It's supposed to be here and here. But it's a very common error. The way you get power, though, is by lining them up. So in my particular traditional system, one of the two major systems I do, Lama, we use this wheeling stance to get your hip on that line, and then from there, the fist will follow the hip. Does that make sense? Yeah. So it's not here. Some people do this, and you're half-assing it. I have to turn so I get that cross body. Remember it, cross. Get that cross body. Remember it, cross. Meaning the arms, and we can do it with the arms extended also, right? So that if you were looking at me from the ceiling, my feet would be east and west, my arms would be north and south. Now another thing about when we do this and we extend the arms, and this is sort of characteristic of my system also, I'm not going to fight that way. In other words, I'm not going to be here and go uppercut for no reason. There might be some applications to this, but at the beginning level especially, it's that body conditioning and that conceptual training. It's not combat training. Because it's, and people don't realize this, right, but when I pull a bow, this is the bow. People don't realize this, right, but when I pull a bow, this is the bow and arrow concept. If I have a bow and arrow, I don't just pull. Both are working in opposite directions for maximum extension. So for example, if I jab, see how I'm not getting the maximum turn? Not only is my left hip and left shoulder going into the jab, but my right hip and my right shoulder is going back, which extends it, right? And gives me more penetration, what we call chun, right? We call straight punches chun choi. I mean literally like drilling, penetrating. Like when an arrow goes through armor, good pointed arrow will go through armor, and it'll go in and it'll have, you know, they put the barbs on it so you can't pull it out. That's the idea of my punch. It's going to hit you. You know, we used to say, I used to tell all my fighters, you're not punching somebody in the front of their face, you're punching out the back of their skull. So for example, doing like, you know, doing the karate thing, right? And again, you can do punches correctly doing this, but the structure doesn't necessarily lend to reinforcing this. Whereas what we're doing is turning. And again, I can turn with what we call the chambered hand. And if I'm lying as I'm turning my hips and shoulders, I'm okay. But what will help is extending my arms. Because I can still be kind of like half-assing it this way, right? But if my arm goes out behind me and extends to get this cross pattern thing, I'm definitely going to be turned on. Two of the most common errors is not remembering that I'm turning my hips so I'm fighting somebody at the north position. In other words, I'm fighting you there. People will do this. They'll turn and they'll be like here, and they'll turn and be like here. That's not what I'm doing. I'm turning, so I'm punching you, punching you, punching you, punching you, punching you, punching you. In my system, the whole system is this zigzagging. And I've seen people that studied with my teacher that didn't understand it. So what they do is they do one movement over here, and they do one movement over here, and they do one movement over here. You're missing the point I'm doing. I'm zigzagging. When I start showing the applications, it'll make sense. The second thing is, and everyone does it, you try to kind of fake it, and so you try to make your feet do it. So when you're turning, you're kind of going. And this is especially true when we start doing the zigzag stepping. My hip is everything. So my hip initiates everything. If I do my hip motion correctly, my foot will move. But that means my hip moves my foot doesn't move my hip. It's not like a race where they tell you like use your foot. No, my hip moves and my foot will drag. Not the other way around. What happens is that people then overstep.